All right, diving in again today, and this time we're heading into some pretty uncharted waters. We're going to be talking about, well, supposed miracles. We found this really interesting YouTube channel, Pastor Jerry Eze,
Hmm.
and there are all these videos where people are giving testimonies about, well, things they believe are divine intervention.
Yeah, it's a fascinating look at how powerful these experiences can be for people,
Yeah.
you know?
Right. And it's important to remember that we're not here to prove or disprove
Right.
anything. We just want to try to understand what these people went through and how it affected them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So should we just jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. One thing that kept coming up was, well, people overcoming incredible medical odds. Like
Right.
there's this guy, Henry, from Ghana. He had fecal incontinence, which, I mean, I can only imagine how tough that would be.
Yeah.
But after Pastor Eze prayed for people with weakness, in that area, Henry said he was completely cured.
It really makes you think about the mind-body connection.
Mhm.
We know the placebo effect is real, right?
Yeah.
We're just believing in a treatment can actually cause physical changes.
Yeah.
But could it really go that far? It's an interesting question.
It is. It really makes you wonder, how much our beliefs can affect our bodies.
Absolutely.
And then there's this other woman, Shane. She had triple negative breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's supposed to be really aggressive. Her doctors were getting ready for chemo and everything.
Hmm.
But then when they did more tests, the cancer was just gone.
Whoa. That brings up spontaneous remission,
Right.
which is, well, incredibly rare. It's documented, but the odds are just so low.
Yeah.
Could Shane's faith have played a role? That's a tough one.
It is. And I know with spontaneous remission, the immune system suddenly starts attacking the cancer cells. We get that part.
Right.
But what triggers it, nobody really knows.
Yeah. And that's where it gets interesting, right? Some researchers are actually looking into whether things like intense emotions
Oh.
or big changes in someone's beliefs could actually be involved.
Yeah.
It's where science and faith kind of meet, And we need a lot more research to really understand it.
Right. So it's not just cancer either. Another big theme was this idea of prayer, really powerful prayer in moments of crisis.
Yeah.
There's this woman, Ruth, from Uganda. She had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy,
Oh, wow.
and she had already lost one fallopian tube before, so this was life or death.
Right.
And during the surgery, things went really bad.
Oh, no.
She was bleeding out, and she thought she was dying. And then she felt like another presence. It's really hard to describe.
I can imagine.
Her mother showed up at the hospital, and she's a very religious woman, and she just started praying, really intensely.
Wow.
And Ruth just recovered. The doctors couldn't explain it.
Near-death experiences are something we hear about a lot.
Yeah.
People talk about peace or seeing light or feeling like they're outside their body.
Right.
We don't know for sure what causes them, but it seems like maybe it's unusual brain activity from extreme stress, or lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
And it makes these stories so fascinating because it could be something beyond what we understand scientifically, right?
Yeah.
Some people think that intense prayer might create some kind of energy field we can't measure yet.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's more about the psychological strength it gives, to the person praying and the people around them.
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure.
It really is. It's like a puzzle with so many missing pieces.
Yeah.
And Ruth's story isn't the only one. Her mom's prayers, it seems like that's a big part of Pastor Eze's whole community. They have this saying, what God cannot do does not exist.
Right. That's like their central belief.
Right. And it seems like it creates this incredible hope, like a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy almost. If thousands of people believe miracles can happen, well, are they more likely to see them?
That's a really interesting question. The power of shared faith, how it affects our experiences. It's definitely something to think about.
It is. And then you have all these other testimonials, a couple who couldn't have kids for years, and then they did, and a woman who was infertile for 10 years, and then she had a baby. It just makes you feel like something extraordinary is happening in this community.
It does, and it makes you wonder, is it purely faith? Or could it be other things, too, like positive thinking or the support they get from each other? It's hard to separate those things,
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's almost like, we're looking into this world where anything's possible. And it's not just medical stuff either.
Right.
There are people who talk about sudden financial breakthroughs or relationships that were completely broken and then they're fixed.
Yeah.
Even stories about being protected from danger, almost supernaturally.
It's true. It's this whole range of human experiences, but they all share this belief that Well, that God intervened somehow.
Mm.
And it makes you wonder, even if you don't believe the same things, if maybe we could learn something from these stories.
That's a good point. Like maybe it's about the power of believing in something so strongly, that faith, that conviction.
Yeah, yeah.
These people are facing these impossible situations, but they never give up hope.
Exactly. And we know that positive thinking can have real effects on our lives.
Right?
So maybe these people, because they have this unwavering faith,
Yeah.
maybe they're tapping into some inner strength, some resilience that helps them get through things that would crush other people.
That's fascinating. And what I noticed is that a lot of these stories, like the ones about money or relationships, it's not just about praying and waiting for a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
These people are taking action too. They're working towards what they want.
That is important. It suggests that their faith is like a motivator.
Yeah.
It inspires them to actually do something to change their situation. So it's belief and action working together, like a partnership between human effort and this higher power that you believe in.
Right. It's not one or the other, it's both. And this brings up another thing, community.
Yeah.
Over and over again, we see how important it is for these people to have others around them who believe the same things, who support them.
It shows how powerful social support can be.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of belonging, of having a purpose, of being stronger together, especially when things are tough.
Exactly.
And maybe that shared faith makes their individual belief even stronger,
Yeah.
Like it creates this force that can actually change things.
You make me think about that idea of collective intention. Like if a group of people all believe the same thing very strongly, maybe they generate some kind of energy that can influence what happens. Whether it's spiritual or psychological, it's clear that shared belief has a real impact.
And that impact goes beyond just the individual.
Oh, right.
These miracles, however you explain them,
Yeah.
they inspire other people in the community too. It's like this positive feedback loop,
Yeah.
Their faith gets stronger, and maybe that leads to more experiences that they see as divine intervention.
It's like a chain reaction of hope and belief. But, thinking about these stories, it also makes you wonder about how we see things, how we interpret them.
Yeah.
What one person might call a miracle, someone else might say it's just luck or coincidence or just, human resilience. It's hard to know where to draw the line.
That's true. It shows how subjective our experiences are,
Yeah.
what we believe, what we expect, our culture. All these things shape how we understand the world around us.
Yeah.
So it's something that seems like a clear sign from God to one person might mean something totally different to someone else.
Absolutely. Which is why it's so important to keep an open mind when we hear these stories,
Right.
but also to think critically. We can appreciate how amazing these claims are, but we also have to remember that human perception is complicated and there might be other explanations.
Exactly. And that leads to another question.
Okay.
If we take a step back from the specific miracles people describe and look at the bigger picture, what can we learn about the power of belief? How it can affect our lives?
Ooh, that's a good one. Because one thing that's come up a lot in this deep dive is how resilient people can be.
Right.
These people face these incredibly difficult situations, but they find strength, hope, a way to keep going, whether it comes from faith or just the human will to survive. Their stories show how good we are at overcoming tough times.
Yeah, it's true. It reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there's this spark inside us that's potential for healing, for growth, for change.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for some people, faith is what ignites that spark, that belief that even when everything seems hopeless, there's something bigger at work guiding them towards something better.
That's a powerful idea. And it brings us back to the personal side of all this. Before we move on to our last point, I'm curious, what stood out to you the most as we've been talking about these stories?
That's a good question.
Mm.
Honestly, it's the variety of experiences that's got me thinking.
Yeah.
Physical healing, financial changes, relationships being restored, people feeling protected from harm. It really shows how many different ways faith can affect our lives.
Right. It reminds us that faith isn't just one thing, it's all these different beliefs and practices and experiences, and it's so personal and powerful. For me, what's really striking is this idea of defying the odds. No matter what you believe, these stories show that the human spirit can overcome almost anything.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shows us that even when logic tells us something's impossible, there's this strength inside us we can tap into, and we can achieve things that we thought we never could.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, for some people, their faith helps them access that strength. It gives them a system of belief that supports them and fuels their determination.
It's like they're saying, hey, don't underestimate what you're capable of. And that takes us to our last point for this whole deep dive. That phrase, what God cannot do does not exist. It's like more than a saying for these people?
Yeah, it's like their core belief
Yeah.
that with God, absolutely anything is possible. And, even if you're skeptical, it's interesting to think about how powerful that kind of belief can be psychologically.
Right. Like, if you really believe that nothing is impossible, could that actually change your mindset enough to overcome things that other people would just give up on?
It's where psychology and spirituality kind of overlap, right?
Mhm.
There's research showing that optimism, that belief in yourself, can really affect what happens in your life, even things like your health or how successful you are.
Mhm.
So could this really strong faith actually be a form of self-empowerment? Like it changes how you see things and it pushes you to take action.
It's really making me think, but it also makes you wonder what happens when someone prays for a miracle and it doesn't happen? Could that be really damaging? Like, could they blame themselves or lose faith altogether?
That's a really important point. Faith without understanding its limits, well, it can be dangerous. I think it's crucial to realize that faith can give you strength, but it doesn't guarantee a specific outcome. Life's complicated, and even if you believe with all your heart, you're still going to face challenges and disappointments and prayers that don't get answered the way you hoped.
Yeah, it's finding that balance, right? Holding on to your faith, but also being okay with the fact that life throws curveballs.
hmm
Maybe it's in accepting all of it, the good and the bad, that we find real strength and wisdom.
I think you're right. It's not about pretending the hard stuff isn't there. It's about finding a way to go through it with grace and strength and having a belief system that gives you comfort and meaning even when things are tough.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into miracles and belief, I want to leave our listeners with a question. If you were up against something that felt impossible, what would you lean on for strength? Your faith, your family, that inner grit, or maybe all of the above?
It's such a personal question, and there's no one answer that fits everyone. The most important thing is to find what works for you, what gives you that sense of hope and grounding when you need it most.
And maybe, just maybe, listening to these stories has sparked something in you, some curiosity about what the human spirit is capable of, about the mysteries of faith and how it can shape our experiences. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, there's no denying that faith can be incredibly powerful. It can help people overcome incredible odds and find hope even in the darkest of times.
I think that sums it up perfectly, and maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. We all have the potential to do extraordinary things. Whether it's through faith, sheer determination, or just that stubborn will to keep going, the human spirit is incredibly resilient. We can overcome, we can find meaning, and we can find purpose even when life throws its toughest challenges our way.